Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
And welcome to another episode of NHL Wraparound. Vic and Neil with you. And now that our 4 summer coolers are in the books, we're going to shortly be getting to Neil's 5 most improved teams during the course of this offseason. But first, we've got to start on a solemn note and acknowledge the passing of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau right before Labor Day. They were tragically killed while riding their bikes in suburban New Jersey, hit by a suspected drunk driver. They were supposed to be groomsmen in their sister's wedding. And Neil, training camps are approaching, but it's just going to feel a little bit more hollow at the beginning.
Of course, and that's it's just such a tragedy, and it doesn't matter that Johnny Gaudreau was a star player in the league. It just matters that 2 young lives are gone. Matthew, his brother's wife, is pregnant with a baby. The Gaudreaus, Johnny has 2 young children, and it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy for the Gaudreau family and all their extended family.
And I think everybody throughout the NHL has been thinking about them. Funeral is scheduled for this coming Monday. And of course, hopefully the Blue Jackets organization can move behind with good memories and perhaps galvanize to have a good season in memory and in honor of Johnny Gaudreau. And we're going to be addressing this a little bit more later in the show. But our main topic today, Neil, is your 5 most improved teams during the course of the offseason. And now that we've done our summer coolers, we've had everything marinate for a little while. No surprise who's number 1 on your list.
Yeah, they made the biggest splashes without a doubt. Barry Trotz, the general manager of the Nashville Predators, made some big splashes in the water of the NHL. Made his team fairly old now. They're almost an average age of 30 years old, but they did some spectacular signings. A big fish of maybe the whole free agency, other than Gensel, of course, who's been a big fish for a while now, is Steven Stamkos, the captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning and 2-time Stanley Cup winner, going to Nashville. They also signed Jonathan Marchessault, who's a Stanley Cup winner from the Vegas Golden Knights. Brady Shea comes in from the Carolina Hurricanes. And then Scott Wedgwood, the goaltender from the Dallas Stars, comes over to Nashville to supplement the signing of their veteran goaltender that they already have in Nashville, Yuri Saros, who's a tremendous goaltender for them. So they've got a real good goaltending duo there. They did lose Jason Zucker, Kiefer Sherwood, Ryan McDonough, and Kevin Lankinen. But I think, Vic, this team is drastically improved.
And they were close in their first round series against Vancouver last year. So let's see if these moves indeed give them that next step as we head towards the new season. So your number 2 team on the list, we're going to switch conferences, and I don't think there's too much surprise here.
No, there's not. This is the New Jersey Devils, who 2 years ago had a shockingly good season, eliminating their crosstown rivals, the Rangers, in the playoffs, only to go down to the Carolina Hurricanes. Last season was a bit of a disaster with injuries. They fired Lindy Ruff. But this offseason, they brought in Sheldon Keefe, who was let go by the Toronto Maple Leafs, a real good coach, number of 100-point seasons. Not that this is an addition, but Dougie Hamilton will be back next season, healthy and ready to go. He missed a lot of last season. That was a big loss for them. But listen to the guys that they picked up during the offseason this year. It's really spectacular, with Jacob Markstrom being the big fish. The goaltender from the Calgary Flames comes in, hopefully for them to rectify their goaltending issues they had last year. Their defense gets improved with Brett Pesce coming in from the Carolina Hurricanes, Brendan Dillon coming in up front, Thomas Tatar, Stefan Nosem. They made some really good additions to this team, and I think that they're going to really be throwing some weight around in that Metro division.
It's interesting that Tom Fitzgerald took so much heat a year ago, and apparently he's rectified a lot of the issues that really raised their heads during the course of the season. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Devils bounce back after missing the playoffs a year ago. So your number 3 team, we're going to go back to the Western Conference, and a club that I know that I championed pretty highly during our Summer Cooler series.
And they've got last year's Jack Adams Award winner behind the bench. That's Rick Tocchet with Vancouver. Now, I'm not sure that that's a curse or that's a great thing to have won the Jack Adams, because as you know, there's a history of coaches being fired after winning the Jack Adams Award. But the Vancouver Canucks really added some good pieces in the offseason in my mind. They got Jake DeBrusk is the biggest piece they brought in. Jake DeBrusk has played his career in Boston, is a real good forward. He'll really supplement what they've already got. Danton Heinen on defense, along with Derek Forbot, both come over to supplement the defense there. And from the Edmonton Oilers, Vincent Desharnais, they signed him away from the Oilers. Big Daniel Sprong comes in on a 1-year contract from the Detroit Red Wings. And Kiefer Sherwood, that we talked about having been lost by Nashville, well, he was lost over to the Vancouver Canucks. They did lose a couple of real good players that they had at the end of the season from the Calgary Flames. They got during the season in Lindholm and Zadorov. Both went to the Bruins. But I think with the names I just named to you, they're a vastly improved team in that division for the coming season.
And certainly they're going to have Thatcher Demko back, and you can't underestimate the experience that Arturs Filos had during that playoff run, performing very well. So this team really looks like they are primed to contend neck and neck with the Edmonton Oilers during the course of the new season. So your 4th one surprised me a little bit, and it was a team that I think when we were doing the Summer Coolers initially, I was kind of lukewarm on, but in a matter of 2 signings of pieces of paper, that narrative seems to have changed a little bit.
Yeah, and remember, what we're trying to say here is who improved the most during the offseason. That's not who's the best teams, but who improved what they had last season to this coming season. And St. Louis Blues, I didn't see them improving that much until they did these offer sheets to the Edmonton Oilers, 2 players, Holloway and Philip Broberg. And when they got both those players and you put them into their lineup, along with Matthew Joseph, Alexander Texier, Radek Faksa, Ryan Suter, who comes in on a 1-year deal to supplement the defense, and I'll talk about why in a second. And then the big signing that they did. Now, this isn't an addition, but this is something that we've got to make note of. Pavel Buchnevich signs a long contract with them and is basically going to play his career in St. Louis with this contract. So the Suter addition, along with the player that they already have in Justin Falk, will have to be used on the power play because it was announced that Torrey Krug will miss the entire season with ankle surgery. So that's the one that they lost. They traded Kevin Hayes away to the Pittsburgh Penguins. But I think with these players that Doug Armstrong has put into his lineup during the offseason, St. Louis now comes back into that playoff picture and was going to make life miserable for some of the teams that assumed they'd be back in the playoffs again in 25.
You still see them as a bubble team?
I do see them as a bubble team, but I think that they're a better bubble team than they were last year.
For your last team, and I'm not sure where you're going with this one, a couple of clubs in the Central that we've been looking at, and they're probably below the bubble, but perhaps one or both of these clubs can find their way in.
Well, remember what I said, that this is a show about who improved the most during the offseason. Chicago had a very low bar last season, okay? They were down with the San Jose Sharks and that, but what they did during the offseason and the players they were able to attract, whether they make the playoffs or not, they still have vastly improved what they put on the ice last season. Let's go through the names. First of all, Tyler Bertuzzi comes in from the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a big addition for them on left wing. Tarvu Teravainen comes in from the Carolina Hurricanes. That's a big addition for them. That's a real good player. Alec Martinez comes in on defense. That's a real good addition on their defense. TJ Brody comes in with him. That's another good addition on defense. Pat Maroon supplements the whole lineup. He'll probably, at his age and this part of his career as a 3-time Stanley Cup winner, will probably be in and out of the lineup. And then from the Winnipeg Jets, they signed Laurent Brossoit, who comes in as the backup, or maybe 1A and 1B with Mrazek as their goaltending there. So, you know what? I just think this is a much better Chicago team that you're not going to be able to take them for granted every night. When you think about Connor Bedard and who he had to play with last year, now all of a sudden he's got Bertuzzi on one side and Teravainen on the other. That's a lot better first line than what they put on the ice last year.
And if anybody takes any liberty with Bedard, then there's Maroon there to get his nose dirty and, lend a little bit of protection, which is important. So the other club that I kind of had as honorable mention, and I wanted to raise to you, are your thoughts on the improvements of the Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, I think they improved. The reason they didn't make the top 5 in my book, Vic, is because they did really improve their defense. They got Mikhail Sergachev in a surprise move from Tampa. They got John Marino and Ian Cole. So the defense unquestionably is better this coming year. But I didn't see all the moves up front and that could put them drastically better than they were last year. They're going to be better than they were last year, but I don't think they're going to be as much better as Chicago's going to be better from what they were last year. And I guess that's the hardest and easiest way to say it.
Understood. And don't forget, they also signed Robert Bortuzzo, who's also an unrestricted free agent. So if nothing else, if you're trying to build the club from the goal out with Vejmelka and Connor Ingram and now a much stronger defense, they're certainly taking the right approach to do that. So those are Neil's top 5: Nashville, Jersey, Vancouver, St. Louis, Chicago. And let's see if their improvements are in line with what Neil saw as their moves during the offseason. And at this time, just want to remind you that our website, NHLWraparound.com, all of our episodes available on both audio and video platforms. And perhaps of all the signings during the offseason, none bigger than the Edmonton Oilers retaining Leon Draisaitl for 8 years, $112 million, an average of $14 million per season. He will be the highest paid player in NHL history for now. And Neil, you came up with an interesting comparison now that Stan Bowman is in Edmonton, but this harkens back memories to his days in Chicago.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, Chicago had a lot of success with the Kane, Toews, Duncan, Keith era. And when it came time to re-sign Toews and Kane, they both were represented by the same agent, Pat Brisson. He was able to get them $10.4 million over 8 years. And that contract started in 15-16. And the Chicago Blackhawks on those new contracts had 2 good seasons, really good, over 100 points, and then boom, the bottom fell out. And my contention is that was taking too much of the cap to pay those 2 players to be able to support them with any good players underneath them. And so you look at the Edmonton Oilers now, and they're paying Draisaitl $14 million now of an $88 million cap. And they're going to have to pay McDavid at least 16 million when he comes due in a year. That's 30 million already of an $88 million cap. Now you look at their defense. They've got Darnell Nurse signed at 9.25. They're going to have to sign Evan Bouchard to a big contract, and they're talking as if he's a 10 or $11 million player. You're talking about already having 50 million within 4 players. How do you have enough money to pay what you need to win a cup, which is a really good goaltender, a great goaltender? And you got Zach Hyman at $5.5 million. He's going to look like he's grossly underpaid compared to these other guys. My point here is that Stan Bowman, again, is in the same situation. Not saying it's his fault, not saying he did anything wrong, not saying anything negative about Stan Bowman, but it makes me think back to when he was in Chicago and he had the same thing happen. The team ended up in bad shape because too much money was given to the star players to give him the ability to support them the way they need to be supported to be a contending team.
So I wanted to ask you, because during the summer coolers, I made the point of saying for Edmonton this year has got to be win or bust. Now, that was before Draisaitl did sign his extension. But that said, given how much money Connor McDavid's going to make next year, Evan Bouchard is a restricted free agent. He's making $3.9 this year. He's going to be up around $9 million. So is the urgency level a little bit higher for this club?
You know what? It may be, but now you've got to think about, because when we did those summer coolers, I don't think they'd lost Holloway and I don't think they'd lost Broberg yet. And Broberg and Holloway are young guys that don't mind chasing pucks. That means your average age goes up, and older guys don't like chasing pucks all over the ice. And you're not going to get Draisaitl and McDavid to chase pucks. You're not going to get Hyman to chase pucks. They're goal scorers. They're stars. So I'm not sure. Already I see some bad signs coming in for the Edmonton Oilers in their support cast. Not in they've got superstars on that team, obviously, but in the support cast, have they got enough this year coming up to have as good a year, once November and December came around last year, as they had from that point forward? We'll have to see, but I see depth on that club slipping away.
And that's going to be one of the fascinating storylines to track throughout the course of the new season. And the Oilers are certainly going to be a headliner throughout, having made Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals a year ago. Welcome to the human side of the story. Earlier in the show, we discussed the tragic loss of Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. And of course, in times of crisis, in times of tragedy, there is really no bonding in pro sports like that of the hockey community. There were candlelight vigils held on September 4th in both Columbus and Calgary. Those are the two cities that Johnny Gaudreau played in during the course of his NHL career. Heartfelt messages came throughout the National Hockey League and extended to other professional sports leagues. LeBron James tweeted out a tribute to Johnny Gaudreau, and there were Major League Baseball games that held moments of silence to honor both brothers, and the Canadians' Cole Caulfield, who was really influenced by Gaudreau when he was a younger player, changed his number from 22 to the number 13 that Johnny Gaudreau wore. And this also brings to mind, Neil, that a year ago in October, Adam Johnson, who's a former Pittsburgh Penguins player, playing in Europe, died in a really tragic skate incident. And I'm not going to call it an accident because those that have seen the video will have their own opinions. But Johnson was not a well-known player, but it really speaks to when we are shocked, when we see one of our athletes pass under such circumstances, everybody really bonds together in a way that just no other sports league does.
Well, I think that the hockey community is a smaller community than the other sports because there's so much more of a fan base for Major League Baseball, for National Football League, and for the National Basketball Association. But in hockey, and I think all of us and the fans included, feel like a little bit of cult altogether. You sort of understand each other. As soon as you run into somebody and they say they're a hockey fan, you have a little bit of an understanding with them. But I think that they come together in times of trauma and times of shock and times of disbelief. I know when I woke up that morning and saw that this had happened on my phone, people had texted to me. I was horribly upset. And I don't know Johnny Gaudreau personally. I know him to watch him. I know that his dad is a tremendous coach in southern New Jersey and that he grew up there and was always a phenom in the state of New Jersey in hockey. And I've had my own trauma, as you know, and my own shock and disbelief with my own family. And I had the hockey community rush to my side in messages and in phone calls and in just heartfelt condolences, which helps get you through things like this. And I can't imagine, and this is the words that were always used to me, I can't imagine. So I don't like using them again, but I'm sick, heartfelt sick for the Gaudreau family. Vic, I've carried this around with me since it happened, and I don't expect it to go away very soon. I just feel for them so strongly.
And it's, as it extends out to their larger family, the Columbus Blue Jackets have gone through something like this for the second time in 4 summers. In the summer of 2021, goaltender Matis Kivlenieks died as a result of a fireworks incident at a holiday barbecue. And certainly for John Davidson, Don Waddell, and new head coach Dean Evison, this is a franchise that really needs something positive to go forward. And as I said at the top of the show, hopefully they're able to honor Gaudreau and use his spirit to galvanize better things ahead, because it has really been a rough go for them.
It sure has been. And from what I understand, Sean Monahan, who signed with the Columbus Blue Jackets because he wanted to play with Johnny Gaudreau the way they had played together in Calgary, bought a house right near Gaudreau's house. And apparently this just destroyed him. And Boone Jenner lives in that area too, the captain of the team. He's destroyed about it. And they're all going to be destroyed for a little while. It's just not easy stuff. And I personally, I don't care what kind of season the Columbus Blue Jackets have. I will cut them a break, and I think everybody should cut them a break this season. They've had a lot of bad luck, bad things happen, and I hope that things can start to go better for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Certainly, and the same feelings here. And, I think it's our responsibility to, when things are going good, to convey them, but to address them in an honest and straightforward way when things are not going well. And certainly we hope for the Columbus Blue Jackets a bit of a rebound this year. And we certainly understand all the pain that they are going through. That will conclude our show for today. Thanks to our listeners, as always, for joining us. Send questions or comments to NHLWraparound@gmail.com. And a reminder that all of our shows, since we started way back in January, are available at NHLWraparound.com on both audio and video. And finally, with the new season approaching, we'll be back to a regular weekly schedule, and guests will be returning as a staple of all of our shows. So, on behalf of Neil, I am Vic, and we look forward to you joining us then.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.